Imagine a world where love was a crime, and fame came with a price: secrecy. Welcome to the hidden lives of 30 Golden Age actors who loved men but hid it throughout life. These icons of Hollywood's Golden Age lived double lives, hiding their true selves from the world. Behind closed doors, they defied the system, risking everything for love and acceptance. Their stories are a testament to the power of human spirit and the sacrifices made for art. Get ready for a shocking journey into the secret world of Hollywood's elite, where love, loss, and longing define their lives. Rody McDowall. Imagine living your life under the brightest lights in Hollywood, constantly smiling for the cameras, while hiding a secret that could destroy your career. That was the reality for Rody McDowall, a beloved star best known for his roles in Planet of the Apes and countless classics. Rody wasn't just an actor, he was a talented photographer, always capturing the candid moments of Tinseltown's most famous faces. Yet, for all his artistic openness, he guarded his own heart closely. Hollywood in the 1950s and 60s wasn't a safe place for anyone who stepped outside society's rigid expectations. For a leading man like McDowall, being open about loving men wasn't just risky, it was potentially career-ending. Throughout his life, Rody maintained extremely close friendships with several male actors, most notably Montgomery Clift. Their deep bond was obvious to those in Hollywood's inner circles, but the details remained shrouded in secrecy. Rody's personal life was so guarded that even when the FBI raided his home in 1974, allegedly over copyright issues, some speculated it had more to do with the industry's paranoia about personal secrets leaking out. Through it all, McDowall played the Hollywood game perfectly. He was never tied to scandal, never outed in a time when such news could ruin a man. But those who knew him saw the struggle, the loneliness of never being able to live truly and openly. Rody McDowall's story is a powerful reminder of the price so many Golden Age stars paid just to survive in an unforgiving industry. Nick Adams. Nick Adams' story is one of Hollywood's greatest mysteries, a tale of ambition, rumors, and tragedy. Adams was a self-made actor, a scrappy kid who clawed his way into the heart of Hollywood's inner circle. He wasn't born into fame. He earned it with relentless drive, starring in cult classics and befriending some of the most iconic stars of the age. But behind his rise was a web of rumors about his personal life. Adams was exceptionally close to James Dean, fueling endless speculation that their bond was more than friendship. After Dean's tragic death, Adams spent years keeping his memory alive, leading many to wonder if he was mourning a friend or something deeper. The whispers grew louder as Adams befriended other leading men, including Elvis Presley, with tabloids hinting at connections that ran far beyond the professional. Biographer Darwin Porter and Hollywood insiders have alleged that Adams had romantic entanglements with both fellow actors and even studio executives. These rumors, never confirmed, always whispered, hung over his career like a shadow. When Adams died young, found dead from a drug overdose in 1968, Hollywood buzzed with conspiracy theories. Did he know too much? Was it an accident? Or the tragic end of a man crushed by secrets he could never share? Nick Adams's legacy is a haunting example of what Hollywood's Golden Age demanded from those who dared to live differently. Raymond Burr. Raymond Burr spent decades living behind one of Hollywood's most elaborate facades. As the star of Perry Mason, Burr became one of television's most beloved legal eagles, embodying justice and virtue. But the man behind the courtroom drama was crafting a different story for the public, a story built on lies, half-truths, and sheer necessity. Burr went to incredible lengths to hide the truth about his life. He claimed to have been married 3 times, with each supposed wife meeting a tragic end. Plane crashes, cancer, you name it. He even invented a son who died young, weaving a web of fiction so detailed that even the most tenacious tabloid had trouble sorting fact from fantasy. The reality, hidden behind this smokescreen, was his decades-long relationship with actor Robert Benavides. Their partnership lasted over 30 years. A love story lived in the shadows. Burr knew the stakes. Being outed in 1950s, Hollywood meant certain career suicide. So, he avoided interviews that got too personal and redirected conversations that touched on his private life. Only after his death in 1993 did the truth emerge. Raymond Burr's double life stands as one of Hollywood's most extreme examples of what it took to survive as a gay man in the Golden Age. A life lived inside a beautiful, heartbreaking lie. Van Johnson. Van Johnson was the golden boy of MGM, the clean-cut star whose every smile seemed made for movie posters. But Johnson's greatest performance wasn't on the silver screen. It was in the everyday act of hiding his true self from a world that wouldn't accept him. As his fame soared in the 1940s, so did the rumors about his private life. The whispers became so persistent that MGM intervened, orchestrating a marriage between Van and Evie Wynn, the ex-wife of his close friend Keenan Wynn. It was a calculated move by the studio. Evie gained security, Van got a respectable public image, and MGM protected its prized investment. But the marriage was never about love, and those who knew Van saw the toll the charade took on him. His own daughter later suggested that her father's marriage was arranged out of necessity, not romance. Insiders believed Van was romantically involved with men throughout his life, a truth he could never publicly acknowledge. The cost of hiding wore him down, leading to a lonely, later life, shadowed by the weight of secrets. Van Johnson's story echoes that of so many stars forced into sham marriages and forced to live half-lives, all to keep the cameras rolling. William Haynes. What would you do if Hollywood told you to choose between your career and the person you loved? William Haynes faced exactly that impossible ultimatum. In the 1920s, Haynes was a top box office draw, funny, charming, beloved by millions. But behind the scenes, he was living openly with his partner, Jimmy Shields, in an era when such honesty was unheard of. MGM eventually gave Haynes a choice: leave Shields and marry a woman, or lose his contract. Haynes didn't hesitate. He walked away from Hollywood, sacrificing fame and fortune for love. But this wasn't the end for Haynes. He reinvented himself as one of the most successful interior designers in Hollywood, with clients like Joan Crawford and Ronald Reagan. Haynes and Shields remained together for over 50 years, their love surviving longer than most marriages in Hollywood. Haynes refused to hide, living as openly as possible and building a new life outside the industry that rejected him. His story is one of remarkable courage, a star who, when faced with impossible choices, chose authenticity over the empty promise of stardom. George Cukor. George Cukor was more than just a legendary director. He was the master of Hollywood's golden era sophistication, the mind behind My Fair Lady, The Philadelphia Story, and countless other classics. But beneath the glittering veneer, Cukor's private life told a story familiar to many of his era. In a town obsessed with image, he built a discreet sanctuary for himself and others like him. Cukor was an open secret among Hollywood insiders. Although he never publicly acknowledged being gay, his sexual orientation was widely known within the industry, and it cost him dearly. Most infamously, he was fired from directing Gone with the Wind, reportedly due to Clark Gable's discomfort with his sexuality, a reminder of how even the most talented could be punished for failing to fit the mold. But Cukor didn't retreat. Instead, he transformed his Beverly Hills home into a haven for closeted stars, actors, actresses, and filmmakers who could drop the act, if only for an evening. His legendary Sunday gatherings offered refuge for names like Carrie Grant, Rock Hudson, and Katharine Hepburn, where Hollywood's elite could, for a few precious hours, be themselves. Though he never married or made public declarations, Cukor's courage helped carve out hidden spaces of acceptance in a fiercely homophobic industry. His story is as much about defiance as it is about artistry, a legacy of brilliance, empathy, and quiet rebellion that helped others survive the Golden Age's double standards. Laurence Olivier. To the public, Laurence Olivier was the embodiment of British theatrical grandeur, a master of Shakespeare, the star of Wuthering Heights and Rebecca, and the epitome of masculine charm. But behind the curtain, Olivier's life was far more complex than his onstage personas. Throughout his career, persistent rumors trailed Olivier, suggesting he was not only one of the greatest actors of his generation, but also a man who loved other men. Whispers of affairs with men like comedian Danny Kaye and actor Henry Ainley fueled gossip columns and later biographical investigations. Olivier's son and widow would deny the stories, but in his own autobiography, Olivier admitted to being attracted to men and hinted at affairs he could never publicly discuss. Olivier married 3 times, most famously to Vivien Leigh, but the emotional turbulence of those relationships and the rumors of his close ties to other men added to the speculation. Hollywood's rigid expectations forced him into secrecy, and despite his achievements, he lived with a sense of duality that haunted many of his peers. Today, Olivier's legacy is one of mastery and mystery, a reminder that even the most celebrated stars were sometimes forced to split their lives in two, sacrificing personal happiness for the sake of professional survival. Tyrone Power. Tyrone Power was Hollywood's quintessential swashbuckler, a heartthrob whose dashing good looks and magnetic screen presence made him the stuff of legend. Off-screen, however, Power's real adventures were far riskier than any sword fight or cinematic romance. Rumors about Power's sexuality swirled for most of his career. Though he was married 3 times to women, insiders spoke of secret relationships with men, including actor Cesar Romero and other leading men. Power's friendships with certain Hollywood insiders were the subject of constant speculation, and those close to him suggested he was tormented by the need to hide his true self. The pressure was immense. The studios tightly managed his image, pairing him with beautiful starlets and ensuring the public saw only what they wanted, a dashing, virile leading man. But Power's struggle with his identity and the industry's relentless demands contributed to a life marked by loneliness and self-doubt. His sudden death at just 44 left fans reeling and questions unanswered. Would Tyrone Power have ever been able to come out? Had he lived in a more accepting era? We'll never know. What's certain is that his personal battles were every bit as epic as the roles he played on screen. Rock Hudson. No one wore the mask of Hollywood masculinity quite like Rock Hudson. He was the all-American heartthrob, the leading man of Giant, Pillow Talk, and dozens of romantic dramas. Women swooned, men admired him, and studios built an empire on his broad shoulders. But Rock Hudson's real life was one of relentless concealment. In private, his sexuality was an open secret in Hollywood, but the stakes for coming out were impossibly high. When Confidential magazine threatened to expose him, his agent made a desperate deal to save his career, and Hudson was rushed into a sham marriage to protect his image. The strain of hiding who he was weighed heavily. His friends, including Elizabeth Taylor, knew the truth, but protected him from the prying eyes of the press. Only when Hudson was diagnosed with AIDS in 1985 did the world finally see the real man behind the star, the first major celebrity whose illness forced America to confront both the AIDS crisis and the hypocrisy of Hollywood's golden veneer. Rock Hudson's story is a tragic lesson in the price of fame and the bravery required to live, even partially, in the truth. He remains a symbol of both the pain of the closet and the hope that someday Hollywood's leading men wouldn't have to hide. James Dean. James Dean lived and died at the intersection of myth and mystery. His rebellion was legendary, his talent unmistakable, and his personal life, from the very beginning, was a puzzle that fascinated fans and insiders alike. Dean's close relationship with radio director Rogers Brackett raised eyebrows long before Rebel Without a Cause made him a star. Brackett's financial and emotional support fueled speculation, and later allegations of blackmail and manipulation added a sinister edge to their story. Hollywood insiders gossiped about Dean's affairs with both men and women, but the press, eager to preserve his bad boy image, kept silent. Even Elizabeth Taylor, one of Dean's closest friends, spoke candidly of the pain and secrets that shaped his relationships. While some believe Dean was bisexual, others see his liaisons as strategic, helping him advance in an industry where sex and power were inextricably linked. James Dean's untimely death at 24 left more questions than answers. Would he have found the courage to live openly? Or would the studio system have crushed him as it had so many before? In the end, Dean remains an enigma, his brief, brilliant life defined as much by what he kept hidden as by what he shared with the world. Anthony Perkins. Anthony Perkins was the boyish, anxious face of a new era in Hollywood, forever remembered for his haunting portrayal of Norman Bates in Psycho. But behind the camera, Perkins was fighting personal demons far scarier than anything Hitchcock could conjure. A struggle with his sexuality, in a time when being true to himself could end his career overnight. Rising to fame in the 1950s, Perkins quickly attracted attention for his sensitive performances. But Hollywood had strict rules, and rumors about Perkins's love life soon swirled. He began a serious relationship with fellow actor Tab Hunter, a secret romance kept well hidden from public view. Their love was real, but Hollywood's homophobia eventually drove them apart, each forced to put career before happiness. In the 1970s, Perkins surprised everyone by marrying photographer Barry Berenson. Some wondered if the marriage was for love or simply a cover, but Perkins remained with her until his death, never fully coming out to the public. When he was diagnosed with HIV in the late 1980s, he kept the illness and the truth of his life quiet. It was only after his passing from AIDS-related complications in 1992 that the full story emerged. Anthony Perkins' legacy is bittersweet. He gave the world one of cinema's most iconic characters, yet lived in fear and secrecy. His journey shines a harsh light on Hollywood's golden age, where fame often meant sacrificing one's own identity. Tab Hunter. To fans, Tab Hunter was the ultimate 1950s heartthrob, a clean-cut, blue-eyed dreamboat who seemed to exist purely for the adoration of young women. But the real Tab Hunter was living a double life, one that nearly cost him everything. Hunter's career was a classic creation of the studio system. He was paired with beautiful starlets like Natalie Wood for orchestrated publicity dates, while in reality, he was in love with fellow actor Anthony Perkins. The two carried on a secret relationship, always aware that discovery could mean ruin. Hunter's fears came to a head when Confidential magazine, notorious for outing celebrities, threatened to expose him. Warner Brothers leapt to his defense, manufacturing more fake romances and pushing Hunter deeper into the closet. For decades, he played the game, hiding his real self from his fans and even from many of his friends. It wasn't until 2005, in his memoir, Tab Hunter Confidential, that he finally told the world his story. Hunter's courage to come out late in life became an inspiration, a reminder that the golden glow of Hollywood often hid unimaginable personal sacrifices. His journey, filled with heartbreak and bravery, helped pave the way for future generations to live and love more freely. Sal Mineo. Sal Mineo's story is one of extraordinary talent, tragic loss, and, ultimately, the courage to be himself in an unforgiving era. Mineo rocketed to fame at just 17 as Plato in Rebel Without a Cause, a role that broke ground by openly coding his character as queer, a rarity in the 1950s. Behind the scenes, Maneo's private life was far more complex than even his most nuanced performances. He struggled with his sexuality in a time when even rumors could end a career. Engaged for a time to actress Jill Haworth, Maneo's true self was revealed when she discovered him with another man. By the 1970s, Maneo made a bold choice for his era. He came out as bisexual and began living more openly with his partner, actor Courtney Burr III. But Maneo's path was never easy. His acting opportunities faded, and Hollywood's doors closed on him as he embraced his identity. In 1976, his life was cut short in a random, violent robbery, his death sensationalized by a media obsessed with the gay angle. Yet, for those who knew him, Maneo's real legacy was his bravery. He was among the first to live openly, even when it cost him everything. A trailblazer for the generations that followed. Farley Granger. Farley Granger made a name for himself in Hitchcock's most suspenseful classics, Rope and Strangers on a Train. But off-screen, his personal life was more daring than any of his roles. Granger lived with a quiet boldness, refusing to let Hollywood dictate his identity. Unlike many of his peers, Granger refused to hide who he was. He had relationships with both men and women, most notably a long-term romance with television producer Robert Calhoun, which lasted over 40 years. He also famously dated composer Leonard Bernstein, and while studios tried to stage romances with women for publicity, Granger never caved to pressure for a sham marriage. In his memoir, Include Me Out, Granger spoke openly about his bisexuality, his loves, and the absurdity of Hollywood's obsession with image. Walking away from major studio contracts in favor of artistic freedom, Granger proved that living authentically, even in the margins, could be the greatest success of all. Granger's legacy is one of quiet defiance. He may not have had the most conventional career, but his refusal to compromise his truth made him a quiet pioneer, opening the door a little wider for those who would come after. Durk Bogard. Durk Bogard was one of Britain's most beloved actors, a matinee idol who deftly transitioned into darker, art house roles as his career progressed. But his greatest act was not on screen. It was the lifelong concealment of his true self, in a world where authenticity could mean disaster. Bogard's relationship with his manager, Anthony Forwood, lasted nearly 40 years. Their partnership, though an open secret among close friends and colleagues, was never publicly acknowledged. The British film industry was no less harsh than Hollywood. Even a whisper about a star's sexuality could mean blacklisting. In a rare act of courage, Bogard took on the groundbreaking role of a gay man and victim, the first British film to use the word homosexual. The choice was risky, reflecting Bogard's growing need to confront, even indirectly, the forces that kept him in the closet. Later in life, he spoke about his fears of being outed, especially after learning that he was on a list of prominent homosexuals targeted by Soviet blackmail. Durk Bogard's journey was defined by tension between love and fear, truth and survival. Though he never came out publicly, his quiet bravery and artistic choices helped push the boundaries for LGBTQ+ representation, showing that sometimes resistance happens in the smallest, most personal acts of integrity. Richard Chamberlain. Richard Chamberlain was the classic romantic leading man of the 1960s and 70s, capturing hearts as the sensitive Dr. Kildare, and later as the passionate priest in The Thornbirds. To the world, he was the very picture of gentle masculinity. But Chamberlain's off-screen life was filled with fear, a secret he believed could cost him everything. As his fame grew, so did the need to protect his private life. Chamberlain formed a decades-long relationship with actor and producer Martin Rabbitt, but the two lived discreetly, presenting themselves as friends or even brothers when in public. For years, Chamberlain carefully dodged rumors, choosing not to marry a woman, yet never speaking openly about his true self. He knew that in Hollywood, Coming out meant risking typecasting, ridicule, or total career ruin. It wasn't until 2003, after decades of living in fear, that Chamberlain came out in his memoir, Shattered Love. By then, he felt free to tell his story of loneliness, compromise, and finally, acceptance. Chamberlain became a quiet icon for LGBTQ+ actors, proof that even the most golden image was often built on sacrifice and secrecy. His courage in later life continues to inspire those who still face the closet shadows in the entertainment world. Liberace. Liberace was a dazzling whirlwind of rhinestones, candelabras, and piano keys, a showman whose flamboyance defined an era. Behind his outlandish stage persona, though, was a man fiercely determined to keep his sexuality a secret. In the 1950s and 60s, Liberace was one of America's most beloved entertainers, wowing audiences with his virtuosic performances and showy costumes. But even as rumors about his personal life swirled, he stuck to his story. He was not gay. He sued tabloids for libel, denied relationships with men under oath, and maintained a series of highly publicized friendships with women to keep gossip at bay. In reality, Liberace's love life was a poorly kept secret within Hollywood circles. His relationships with young men, most famously Scott Thorson, were the stuff of legend, even as he went to extreme lengths to cover them up. Managers and even actress Betty White, a close friend, played along, serving as beards when needed. Liberace's double life was both triumphant and tragic, a testament to his talent, but also a sobering reminder of the era's cruelty. He became a symbol of what it cost to shine so brightly in a world determined to keep some lights hidden in the dark. Carrie Grant. Carrie Grant was the definition of Hollywood elegance, with a charm so smooth and a style so impeccable that he became the gold standard for leading men. But for all the adoration he received on screen, Grant's personal life was filled with intrigue, speculation, and rumors he could never outrun. Throughout his career, Grant was dogged by questions about his sexuality. He was married 5 times to women, but his famously close relationship with actor Randolph Scott was the subject of endless whispers. The two shared a Malibu beach house dubbed Bachelor Hall for more than a decade, their domestic life captured in photographs that looked more like scenes from a romantic drama than a typical Hollywood bromance. The studios did everything they could to spin Grant and Scott's bond as nothing more than a deep friendship, pairing both men with starlets and publicizing heteronormative romances. Yet, insiders, and later biographers, suggested that what they shared was far more than friendship. Grant's relationship with designer Ori Kelly added more fuel to the fire, and Hollywood fixer Scotty Bowers claimed to have arranged same-sex encounters for Grant and other stars. Cary Grant never publicly acknowledged his sexuality, leaving behind a legacy both of timeless artistry and perpetual mystery. A man forever caught between the roles he played and the life he wanted to live. Randolph Scott. Randolph Scott was the stoic cowboy, the tall, rugged hero of countless westerns, and a man whose on-screen image was built on unyielding masculinity. But those who knew him best saw another side, a gentler soul whose deepest relationship may have been with fellow actor Cary Grant. Scott and Grant's shared Malibu home became legendary in Hollywood. The two were inseparable, photographed relaxing by the pool, cooking together, or simply enjoying each other's company. While the public was fed the narrative of two bachelors just saving money, insiders suspected, and many believed, they were much more than friends. To protect their careers, both men eventually married women, but the shadow of their partnership lingered in the gossip columns for decades. Some called it a love story, others a case of two lonely men finding solace in each other's company. Randolph Scott never addressed the rumors, living out his later years in quiet dignity. His story is emblematic of so many in Hollywood's golden age, men who found love and comfort in each other, but could never admit it out loud. The true nature of their relationship may never be fully known, but the courage it took to live even a half-truth is worthy of its own silver screen epic. Montgomery Clift. Montgomery Clift was the poster child for Hollywood's new breed of actors: sensitive, methodical, and heartbreakingly vulnerable. With his soulful eyes and tortured intensity, Clift transformed every role into a masterpiece. But his real-life suffering was often greater than anything he portrayed on screen. Clift was deeply private, his sexuality known only to his closest friends and confidants, including Elizabeth Taylor. Despite relationships with women, insiders understood that his true romantic attachments were with men, connections he guarded fiercely. The pressure of living a double life, coupled with the emotional pain of hiding who he was, led Clift down a path of addiction and self-destruction. Rumors about Clift's relationships with actors and writers persisted, but he never confirmed them publicly. He became known as one of Hollywood's most tragic figures, his career and health unraveling under the weight of secrecy and self-denial. Montgomery Clift's legacy is both luminous and sad. An actor who gave everything to his craft, but whose greatest struggle was finding the freedom to simply be himself. In an industry obsessed with image, Clift's real triumph was the honesty of his art, even when his heart had to remain hidden. Ramon Navaro. Ramon Navaro was Hollywood's original Latin lover, a silent film star whose beauty and charisma made him one of the industry's first great sex symbols. From Ben-Hur to romantic dramas, Navaro's presence electrified the screen and captured the hearts of audiences around the world. But behind the scenes, his life was marked by secrecy and struggle. Born José Ramón Gil Samaniego in Mexico, Navaro's rise to fame coincided with the dawn of the Hollywood studio system, a system that demanded conformity and punished difference. Though he was a darling of the tabloids and often seen in the company of beautiful women, Navaro lived much of his life as a closeted gay man. His relationships with men were carefully concealed, with only close friends and a few insiders knowing the truth. The fear of exposure haunted Navaro. Studios promoted his romantic escapades with women, while the real story was hidden away. Despite the risk, Navaro formed genuine and loving relationships with men throughout his life. Tragically, his sexuality became sensationalized after his brutal murder in 1968, when the press obsessed over lurid details and ignored his contributions as a trailblazing artist. Navaro's story is both heartbreaking and heroic. He endured the cruelty of his era with grace, refusing to let Hollywood's hypocrisy steal his dignity. Today, he is remembered not only as a star, but as one of the earliest LGBTQ icons in film history. Charles Lton. Charles Lton was one of the most gifted character actors of the 20th century. His commanding performances in The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Mutiny on the Bounty, and Witness for the Prosecution are still studied and admired. But away from the limelight, Lton struggled with a personal truth he felt he could never reveal. Lton's bisexuality was an open secret among his peers. Married to actress Elsa Lanchester, the two enjoyed a close companionship, but many believed their relationship was more of a partnership than a romance. Insiders, including Hollywood fixer Scotty Bowers, later claimed Lton was deeply in love with Tyrone Power and pursued same-sex relationships throughout his life. The pressure of living in the closet was immense. Lton navigated a world where public exposure meant social ruin, crafting a public persona that matched the industry's expectations while living a far different life in private. Despite this, he found a sense of belonging among friends who understood his struggles and supported his need for discretion. Lton's courage, humor, and artistry left an indelible mark on Hollywood. Though he never lived openly, his journey helped pave the way for future actors to embrace their true selves without fear. John Gilgood. Sir John Gilgood's name is synonymous with Shakespearean excellence and theatrical mastery. With a career that spanned 8 decades, Gilgood conquered both stage and screen, winning acclaim and adoration across continents. Yet, his personal life was fraught with the fear and danger that came with being a gay man in the early and mid-20th century. In 1953, Gilgood's private life became painfully public when he was arrested in London for importuning for immoral purposes, a charge related to soliciting homosexual acts, which were illegal at the time. The scandal could have ended his career, but the theater community rallied around him, and Gilgood went on to even greater success. Despite this brush with disaster, Gilgood lived quietly and discreetly with his longtime partner, Martin Hensler. Their relationship, though never acknowledged in the press, provided Gilgood with comfort and companionship for decades. Gilgood's correspondence and memoirs reveal a man who struggled with anxiety about being outed, but who ultimately found ways to express his truth through art and private love. His story is a testament to resilience and the power of community, a reminder that even in the darkest times, acceptance can flourish in the spaces between the spotlight and the shadows. Clifton Webb. Clifton Webb was the ultimate Hollywood dandy, a celebrated actor and dancer whose elegance and wit made him a staple of the silver screen. He played eccentric, razor-tongued characters in films like Laura, The Razor's Edge, and Sitting Pretty, but off-screen, he defied expectations even more boldly. Webb never married and was rarely seen in the company of women, which set tongues wagging in an era obsessed with heteronormativity. His closest relationship was with his mother, whom he adored and often brought to industry events. Hollywood's inner circles knew the truth. Webb was gay, and although he didn't make public statements about his sexuality, he didn't go out of his way to hide it either. Stories circulated of Webb flirting with young men at parties and making jokes about gender roles. Some industry memoirists, such as Robert Wagner and Scotty Bowers, wrote about Webb's romantic interests in men, describing him as both a gentleman and a quietly proud member of Hollywood's queer community. Clifton Webb's refusal to play by the era's rules, both on-screen and off, paved the way for a new generation of actors less afraid to be themselves. He is remembered as a trailblazer, whose real-life bravery was as memorable as any role he played. Alan Ladd. Alan Ladd was the brooding, soft-spoken star of Shane, This Gun for Hire, and dozens of film noir classics. Audiences admired his rugged looks and stoic demeanor, but beneath the surface, Ladd was a deeply private man whose life was shadowed by persistent rumors about his sexuality. Though Ladd was married 3 times and had children, insiders in Hollywood suspected that he maintained close relationships with men that went far beyond typical friendships. Director George Cukor, himself an important figure in Hollywood's LGBTQ circles, allegedly counted Ladd among the gay scene's most guarded members. The pressure of living in the closet, coupled with personal struggles and career challenges, left Ladd vulnerable. He battled depression and feelings of isolation, rarely letting anyone see his true self. Despite the rumors, Ladd never commented on his sexuality, choosing instead to focus on his craft and family. In the end, Alan Ladd's story is emblematic of a generation forced to make heartbreaking compromises in the pursuit of acceptance. His life and career serve as a reminder of the hidden sacrifices that underpinned the glamour of Hollywood's golden age. Kirk Douglas. Kirk Douglas was the definition of Hollywood intensity, a tough, charismatic actor whose roles in Spartacus, Paths of Glory, and Champion made him a household name. Publicly, Douglas cultivated an image of rugged heterosexuality, married twice, with a big, boisterous family and a string of on-screen romances. But the real Kirk Douglas was, as many insiders believe, far more complex than the tabloids ever revealed. Rumors about Douglas's close relationships with men persisted for decades. Directors and industry insiders, including George Cukor, counted him among Hollywood's tight-knit, closeted community. Biographers and historians have pointed to Douglas's preference for privacy and his intense friendships with other men, as evidence that his personal life was not as straightforward as it appeared. While there's no solid proof, whispers of bisexuality have lingered in the background of his legendary career. In his memoir, Douglas wrote openly about the pressures of maintaining a public image, hinting at inner struggles that may have gone far deeper than he let on. The social climate of his era was unforgiving, and he understood that full honesty about his sexuality would have ended his career in an instant. Kirk Douglas's life was a study in contrasts: public bravado and private complexity, cinematic heroics and personal battles. His legacy is not just one of screen greatness, but also a testament to the hidden costs of fame and the untold stories of old Hollywood. David Niven. David Niven was the embodiment of British charm and sophistication, an Oscar winner who could move audiences to laughter and tears with a single raised eyebrow. Best known for roles in The Pink Panther and Separate Tables, Niven's debonair persona masked a private life full of unanswered questions and closely guarded secrets. Niven was married 4 times, and his personal life was constantly in the public eye. Yet, behind the scenes, rumors about his relationships with men persisted. Friends and colleagues often spoke of his deep connections with other men, relationships that seemed to transcend the boundaries of ordinary friendship. Hints about Niven's bisexuality can be found in his autobiography, Bring on the Empty Horses, where he discusses the complexity of intimacy and companionship. Though he never publicly addressed the rumors, those who knew him best saw the duality of a man who navigated the pressures of fame while longing for genuine connection. Hollywood in Niven's day was no place for honesty about sexuality, and so he played his part, always the gentleman, always the witty host. David Niven's legacy is both a tribute to his talent and a poignant reminder of the sacrifices required to maintain the illusion of the Golden Age. John Garfield. John Garfield was the original anti-hero, a tough, streetwise actor who brought a new kind of realism to Hollywood. With memorable turns in The Postman, Always Rings Twice, and Body and Soul, Garfield was a favorite of both audiences and critics. But his off-screen life was often clouded by suspicion and sorrow. Unlike many of his peers, Garfield never married, which only fueled rumors about his sexuality. Hollywood insiders speculated that his close friendships with other men went beyond simple camaraderie, and stories from those who knew him pointed to a man wrestling with his own desires in a deeply homophobic era. The stress of hiding, coupled with the constant scrutiny of the press and the FBI, took a heavy toll on Garfield. He suffered from anxiety and depression, ultimately dying young from a heart attack at just 39. John Garfield's journey is a cautionary tale about the dangers of living in the shadows. He broke ground as an actor, but the price of authenticity was simply too high. Today, he is remembered for his artistry and his quiet courage in facing the personal and societal challenges of his time. Rex Harrison. Rex Harrison brought intelligence and elegance to every role he played, from Professor Henry Higgins in My Fair Lady to the irrepressible Dr. Dolittle. But behind his confident, urbane exterior was a man who lived with secrets, navigating the tightrope of public expectation and private truth. Harrison was married twice, but even as he played the romantic lead, stories of his close relationships with men abounded. He was known for his flamboyant personality and for surrounding himself with young male friends, fueling speculation that his private life was more complicated than it seemed. Biographers, and those within Hollywood's inner circles, have long suggested that Harrison may have had same-sex relationships, though he never publicly addressed such rumors. The pressure to maintain his leading man image meant keeping his true self hidden, even as whispers grew louder. Despite, or perhaps because of, the constraints he faced, Harrison gave his characters a remarkable depth and sensitivity. His story is one of charm, talent, and the heavy cost of secrecy. Rex Harrison's legacy is not only his filmography, but the intrigue and empathy that followed him long after the curtain fell. Orson Welles. Orson Welles was a cinematic genius, a pioneer whose work as actor, writer, and director changed the art of film forever. From Citizen Kane to The Third Man, Welles' creativity and charisma were unmatched. But his personal life was a labyrinth of relationships, ambition, and elusive truth. Welles never married, and his intimate friendships with men, particularly those in the creative arts, sparked persistent rumors about his sexuality. He thrived in the company of both men and women, cultivating deep, meaningful connections that often left the public and biographers guessing about the real Orson. Some writers and acquaintances described Welles as sexually fluid, attracted to both men and women, but unwilling or unable to define himself by labels, especially in a time when the wrong revelation could end a career. Instead, he poured his energy into his art, pushing boundaries and challenging norms at every turn. Welles's story is as complex and enigmatic as his films. The rumors about his private life have never overshadowed his contributions to cinema, but they add another layer to the legend. A reminder that even the greatest creative minds are shaped by the worlds they are forced to hide. These were the secret lives of 30 Golden Age actors who loved men but had to hide it throughout their careers. Each story is a powerful reminder of the courage it took to survive, and sometimes even thrive, in a world that demanded silence and conformity. If these hidden histories moved you, or if you learned something new about your favorite classic stars, don't forget to hit that like button. Share this video to keep these stories alive and shining in the light they always deserved. And if you want more untold Hollywood tales, subscribe to our channel and join us for the next behind-the-scenes adventure.